It's time for the Social Show with Viwe Kyolwana.
Social Show? Social Show.
To the Social Show. My name is Viwe Kyolwana, and for the next few minutes we're going to be talking all things CSI, CSR and shared value. I am super excited about this show because not only is it marking the first real week of spring that has just moved past, but also we're marking off a lot of corporates that are trying to finish off their projects and are really striving to make sure that their projects are actually coming to fruition. It's like a time for reaping, as we all know. Spring to be a time of reaping, so I'm very excited to see how things are formulating, how things are ending up, and how things are sort of coming together for a lot of corporates. But a lot of NGOs are also sort of they've had their year, they've had sort of a good or a bad year depending on how they worked, and also they've learned a few lessons, and that's really what is going to take us straight to the end of the show is what have you learned, how far have you gone, but more than that, what is it that you are completing at the moment, and how does it make you feel, and how was the work in regards to that. And I think it's very important that we do, just from a conversation level, from an intellectual level, that we do sort of have these conversations, these robust conversations about how far we've come as an industry, how far we feel we could go as an industry. And I think if you have anything that you'd like to add, please send me an email at press@social-tv.co.za, or you can just send me an email, a tweet on brandlive.co.za. Of course, we are on brandlive.co.za, so you obviously will do that. For the next few minutes, we're going to have a really enticing show. I think it's going to be one of those that makes you think a little bit more about what it is that you're trying to do in your world, in your space, in your environment, in your homes, with your friends. What is it that you're trying to change? But anyway, let me not blabber too much. Let's go straight into the news.
CSI update.
WESA, the Wildlife and Environment Society of South Africa, WESA annual awards have paid tribute to a range of environmental achievements at its 92nd AGM, which was hosted at the WESA's Eastern Cape membership branch at Cape Recife near Port Elizabeth. The WESA Awards, which have been presented since 1974, enable WESA to recognize and honor those who have made a significant contribution to the environmental conservation and environmental education sector in South Africa over the past year in an exceptional and a sustained manner. The WESA Individual Award was presented to Duncan Paul. The WESA Group Award recipient was the Friends of Bloberg Conservancy Area, and WESA Award for Corporates, which was awarded to eThekwini Municipality and Nampak PLC. WESA also paid tribute to Mavuso Simang, who was awarded a prestigious WESA Gold Award for his contribution to the transformation of the environmental and conservation sector over the past 30 years. As part of its H&M's mission to become truly circular by 2030, its charitable arm, the H&M Foundation, has opened two hydrothermal textile recycling plants in partnership with the Hong Kong Research Institute of Textiles and Apparel. The pre-industrial sized recycling facilities located in Hong Kong are considered the first of their kind because they use HKRITA's award-winning hydrothermal method to recycle cotton and polyester blends. Blends are the most used type of textile in the world, yet they remain unrecyclable. The launch of the Hong Kong plants marks the first time hydrothermal recycling technology is being put to practice on that scale. The purpose of the facility is to invite fashion brands and stakeholders worldwide to see and test and implement this technology within their own operations. HKRITA will license the results widely to make available to all and enable a bigger impact. And lastly, in our news, South Africa's first Green Coast status has been awarded to the City of Cape Town's Bloberg Nature Reserve in recognition of their commitment to preserving the unique flora and fauna along its coastline. In light of this achievement, the city's Environmental Management Department and its implementing partner, the Friends of Bloberg Conservation Area Organization will continue to actively monitor, maintain, and ensure the accessibility of this coastline while providing opportunities for the environmental education, sustainable tourism, and the empowerment of local communities. The city of Cape Town's Blauberg Nature Reserve is at the heart of the first green coast status that was awarded to the coastal site in South Africa. The nature reserve is situated in an area that includes approximately 2,000 hectares of pristine coastal landscape and is home to critically endangered vegetation and boasts over 7 kilometers of a coastline. And that concludes our news for today.
When I was 5 years old, I was an annoying kid, playing all the time and asking my mom to buy me that toy or that toy. And I always wondered why my dad can do the same. Why he needs to spend his time like doing boring things like waking up in the morning very early or coming back late at night. But you know, time has changed. From 2007 to 2012, the number of unemployed people has increased from 170 million to 202 million. And 75 million young people just like me are currently unemployed. So I guess that my father, he had an easier time finding a job. But we can change that.
400 kilometers off the eastern coast of Africa, Madagascar boasts unrivaled species and ecosystem diversity. Nearly 98% of the island's land mammals, 91% of its reptiles, and 80% of its flowering plants are found nowhere else on Earth. Scientists from Chicago's Field Museum, including MacArthur Fellow Steve Goodman, are studying and seeking to conserve biodiversity here. In Madagascar and 7 other areas of the tropics, the Foundation strives to strike a balance between conservation and the needs of rural communities in developing countries. A research initiative at Arizona State University is examining this question using case studies in Peru, Tanzania, and Vietnam. Other new projects seek to identify and mitigate the threat from global climate change on species in some of the most diverse ecosystems on the planet.
You're back on the social show, and of course we've been seeing it's been an interesting past few months actually from a social justice perspective. If we're talking about the recent videos that have been coming up and popping up out of different people and around who are South African, speaking about black people in a specific way. I don't want to say the K word, obviously being one of the words that have been thrown around quite boldly in these videos. Of course, if you know what I'm talking about the recent Adam scandal where he said something about South Africa and just really pointed out his racism against black people in South Africa by using the K word. And then now this Durban businessman boldly sort of called our president, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, the K word in a video. And it got me thinking a lot about how this sort of affects corporates and businessmen in this space, because obviously these men both have businesses. These men both people who are highly influential, have money, who are working and who are contributing to the economy, or in some shape or form have some sort of structure that is supported by black people. And of course, every business, as you know, the reason why we have the show, every business has a legally has to give something to CSI. And so I was wondering then in my mind how social justice sort of plays a part in your business, if it does at all. Do you know what your boss, what your CEO, what your colleague actually thinks about people, actually thinks about race, actually thinks about gender? And we all know this is a time where we're all trying to fight inequality and racism, just from a really basic level at this point. Because if people can just do videos like this, it's quite a basic level where, man, we need to really, really just see how people aren't being sensitive to our past and to these sort of misconceptions about black people, and just misconceptions, not even misconceptions, just pure racism, right? So how does this affect your business? How would it affect your business if you didn't know, or you knew, or you've just found out through the media, your CEO, your manager, your general manager, whatever it is, whoever it is that is a little bit before you as a black human being or as just a non-white, comes out with a video like this on a beautiful Friday morning. This is the first video you see. It's from somebody you know, from your company. You know it's going to affect their business. You know it's going to affect every single part of how you run business, how you present yourself in the world, especially if you are you sort of pledged sort of allegiance to your company, or you are known for being that person in the company. How does it affect you, and what can you do? And I think that's the question we have today on the show. How are you dealing with issues of social justice from a top-down level, but also just from a level of, we didn't know that this is what they thought about us. We didn't know that this is what my CEO, what my manager thought about me. I now am finding out what is it that I can do. But also, if you are a CEO or you are an owner of a business and you find out that one of your employees is racist or has some sort of gender bias or is, homophobic, whatever the case may be, how do you then tackle that? How do you tackle it in a way that is exemplary, that is fair, and that is also going to show that you don't tolerate that kind of behavior, right? Inequality is definitely the defining social issue of our time, but I definitely think that companies have the power to do something about it, especially if they work intentionally and they work intelligently with non-profit organizations. There's so many non-profit organizations now that are coming out that are for social justice, that are for making sure that we're not just dealing with these sort of really big issues like poverty and inequality, but we also go to the grassroots of them, right? Because poverty is in a way linked to racism, is linked to all these sort of inequalities that we find in our time. And I think it's important that we not only just jump the gun and go fix the problem without understanding what caused it in the beginning. So that's what I'm going to be speaking about today. A few ways in which you, as a company, as an individual, as an entrepreneur, can really meaningfully support social justice movements, because they do and need your support. But more than that, they are really galvanizing people, getting people together, getting people to come up and show out. And people are not buying, and people are buying. People's buying power is really hanging on the ledge of social justice. So it's important that we speak a little bit about getting involved in social justice. I know it can be overwhelming. I know it can be. It's tricky. There's a variety of movements. There's tricky vocabulary words and big names to know, and it can make your work very difficult to start, especially if you're a CSI manager and you really want to get involved within social justice, right? But even though it is a tricky space, it's not reason enough for you not to join the movement. It revolves around the world. It is about making sure that people are come to the part and are good and have good intentions, and don't sort of use old, archaic, discriminatory words or affirmations or thoughts or stereotypes or ideas or concepts to further, pull us apart from each other. So it's important that we do get involved as corporates. It's important that we don't look at it as a soft issue, and we look at it as something that's very important. Now, most people involved in social justice will have a similar story. Taking a small initial action that propelled them into social justice. When you start something small, it can sort of grow into something else. But if you want to get involved in a movement for good, you really need to start understanding what meaningful participation means and what it means to really be part of these movements. The first thing you need to do if you are going to get involved in social justice is, educate yourself on a particular movement. I'm not saying you need to go on every single platform, on every single movement, because obviously not all movements will speak to you. But the one that is more prevalent in your office, the one that's more prevalent in your community, the one that's more prevalent in your sort of branding and the people that you are sort of targeting, that's probably the one you want to be part of. Educate yourself on a particular movement. Make sure you know the ins and outs. Make sure you know who the right people to speak to are. Make sure you know what it is that you're trying to convey and why you are trying to be part of that specific movement. Before you can get involved in any movement, you have to make sure you understand what the cause is and what it's trying to achieve. And if you're interested in, let's say, climate justice, right? Water. You have to understand what are the existing campaigns, what are the existing actions, and how far that has gone, and where you can pick up, and what resources you have to pick up from there, right? And also, it's beyond just getting information online. It's really a good idea for you to read the books, get more in-depth analysis of a particular social movement, regardless of how much you think you know. No matter how much you think you've got Google, you really need to understand it from a really a book level, you know, a level where you can say this is factual work. So the first thing you need to do is really educate yourself. Whoever you are, whatever it is that you're thinking of doing, educate yourself, understand every single part of it. So when people come at you, because what happens is with social movement is that you have a lot of rebuttal from people at large, and you need to stand firmly on your points if you want to make it through. So understand what it is that you're going to be supporting. Another thing is, the second thing to look at is your own habits and your own beliefs, right? It's another thing to really understand information and really understand and comprehend it and really read all the books. But it's another thing to really see it then in your life, how you contribute to those things that you're trying to fight, right? It's very important to unlearn some of the systems that we are taught. And that's one of the biggest things about social justice, is that it's about unlearning. Before engaging others or protesting an institution, make sure you, in your own personal capacity, are not, you know, contributing to the problem at hand. You know, it doesn't make sense to ask others to help you combat racism if you abuse white privilege or you silence people of color in your workplace. You know, you have to first unlearn your horrible habits. Make sure that you correct yourself. Make sure that you are able to take critique, because that's the first thing we need to get, you know. And I know a lot of white people get a lot of backlash when they do try to stand up for or try to have a voice on specific racial matters, especially when it is directly links to black people. And I mean, I see their effort, but a lot of the time I find that they've got the theory, but they're not seeing it sort of translated in their own world, and they don't understand what it means for them personally. It doesn't make sense for you to go fight in the streets, but at home you're dormant, you know, you're passive. So make sure that you are literally looking at your own habits, literally changing day by day. It's not easy, but you have to sort of look at what you're doing. Okay, and then we go on to our third point, which is research the local presence. Now, I think it's very important to build connections with other like-minded people. There are so many people who are doing the work that you've been doing. Even if you do think you woke up with the brightest idea, there's definitely somebody you could partner with locally who will definitely help you sort of navigate your way in the space. Local activist groups and organizers often hold open meetings. I'm excited to meet people that are involved. I mean, I know Ahmed Kathrada Foundation does a lot of this, you know, does a lot of social activism work. And what I love about them is that they always want to introduce and fill in and make sure that the civil society is involved, from business owners in the area to just people in general who have a voice. Everyone has a voice. So it's very important that you do join a local activist group, or a group online, or a group that is really about what it is that you want to do. One that really speaks to the kind of work that you want to get involved in. You know, I know there's a great website called meetup.com. It's a great resource for finding meetings about activism, politics, and social justice. I'm not sure how big it is in terms of whether or not it's very open in South Africa, but I'm sure that even if you come up with something like that, even if you're a corporate in the tech space, come up with a space where all local activists can come together and speak online and engage and come together and formulate some sort of argument on some sort of action or some sort of policy that's going to make sure that we do make a dent in social justice and we do, you know, see a difference. I think it's very important to do that. Another thing is, obviously, let's take action in our own communities. Don't start too far. You know, bring it home. I think it's very important when you see it in the forefront of your own home, when you see it in the spaces that you work and in the people that you know, when you see their lives change, when you see the lives of your local street vendor change, or the people, the way you buy at Spar. You know, you could go to Spar and you could see a mismanagement situation between a manager and a worker, and someone who works, an employee rather, and you really can tell it's got a bit of a racial undertone to it. Do something there, you know, open up a social justice dialogue, get to know the manager, especially if you're in a place of power. You know, I think it's very important that we start at home. It's very important that we see where we can fix our issues at home. The closest to home, to the problem, also the closest to the solution. That is something that Glenn E. Martin, founder of Just Leadership USA, has said, and I completely agree with it. The closest to the problem is also the closest to the solution. Let's not go find problems in Madagascar when people in South Africa, people in your hood, people just down your road, people in next door are struggling with some sort of social justice issue, there's something that you can do it there. It's also important that we protest and we demonstrate our unity. That's probably one of the biggest things that South Africa is built on protesting. I think we're built on being able to march and to stand up. And I think most cities and most countries that have gone through some sort of racial degradation, especially for people of color, do understand the point and the uniqueness, but more than that, the potency of demonstrating and marching. And I think that's one thing that we do really well. Come up with something. I know it can be an intimidating step, because sometimes it just looks like we're all just trying to demonstrate for some other reason. It really doesn't really go really where you want it to go, like in the belly of the beast. But I definitely think it's one of the greatest ways actually to practice active resistance and public speaking, because you are going to get some sort of news, you are going to get some sort of coverage somewhere. And as much as a lot of people would shy away from that, but I think it's very important that you have that awareness for your issue, just as long as it's on topic and as people are talking about it, you've done something to move it a little bit forward. So we definitely think, make your signs, print your information, hand out, talk to people, be an evangelist for social justice. Go around, tell people, share the story, and just make people understand. It's very important. Another one is, let's use social media. I mean, social media is very important. I know a lot of people are against hashtag activism. So am I a little bit. I understand the intricacies of it. I'm not against it. I definitely think that more can be done. I definitely think that social media is a beginning. It's not necessarily the belly, as I said. So on Facebook, you can either join or create a group dedicated to discussing and organizing around the movement of your choice. On Twitter, you can find other people who tweet about it, and you can sort of talk to them and sort of come up with ideas. There's a lot of people. I know Tumblr is also a really robust community. It also encourages the sharing of personal experience and acts as a safe space to talk through issues you might not want to discuss in your everyday life. Social media is a good place to practice your activism. Posting articles, sharing videos, writing updates about organizing meetings or information about your movement are all simple ways to share your messages about whatever movement it is. And you can do this just before lunch, quickly. You don't have to dedicate a specific time. These things are easily accessible. So you mustn't really think about it as a giant in the room. Think about it as your everyday. Every day you are trying to maintain social justice in some way, shape or form. Last two things you need to do: volunteer your time, learn on the job, find out where you can go, and also donate to an impactful organization. Your money, whether it's 10 Rand, whether it's 10,000, it goes a long way. I hope you've learned a little something about social justice and how you can manage some sort of response to whatever it is that's happening in your space, in your country, in your working life that you see on a daily basis, and how you can organize and you can transform your spaces from your office. Honestly, be part of the solution, not part of the problem. We're going to take a short break and be back after this with things to remember.
When you've been around for almost 150 years, you operate in 197 countries, and you sell millions of products a day, you have opportunities and responsibilities. A responsibility to respect people and the environment, to do the right thing, to be transparent. That's why we've asked you how we can be a better business. We've listened to what you said and taken action. We turned your feedback into 38 commitments, a set of commitments you can hold us accountable to, that we apply across our business. Sourcing, manufacturing, packaging, marketing, consuming. We've already come a long way, but this is just the beginning. We know there will be challenges, and while sometimes we might surprise ourselves, we won't always get it right first time. But we're determined to do more and to share our progress with you. To find out how we're doing, visit Nestle.com.
definitely my favorite part of the show. The one part of the show where I think, even if you didn't hear anything that I actually said, you definitely should remember this. It's the last words, the last thing you're going to hear from the social show. We're going to play a clip and then we're going to come back.
Try this at your next party. Ask your guests to define the term social justice. Okay, it's not charades or Twister, but it should generate some interesting conversation, especially if your guests are on the political left. Since everyone on that side of the spectrum talks incessantly about social justice, they should be able to provide a good definition, right? But ask 10 liberals to tell you what they mean by social justice, and you'll get 10 different answers. That's because social justice means anything its champions want it to mean. Almost without exception, labor unions, universities and colleges, private foundations, and public charities claim at least part of their mission to be the spreading of social justice far and wide. Here's the mission statement of the AFL-CIO, but it could be the mission statement for 1,000 such organizations. Quote, "The mission of the AFL-CIO is to improve the lives of working families, to bring economic justice to the workplace and social justice to our nation." In short, social justice is code for good things no one needs to argue for and no one dare be against. This very much troubled the great economist Friedrich Hayek. This is what he wrote in 1976, 2 years after winning the Nobel Prize in economics. "I have come to feel strongly that the greatest service I can still render to my fellow men would be that I could make the speakers and writers among them thoroughly ashamed ever again to employ the term social justice." Why was Hayek so upset by what seems like such a positive and certainly unobjectionable term? Because Hayek, as he so often did, saw right to the core of the issue. And what he saw frightened him. Hayek understood that beneath the political opportunism and intellectual laziness of the term social justice was a pernicious philosophical claim, namely that freedom must be sacrificed in order to redistribute income. Ultimately, social justice is about the state amassing ever-increasing power in order to do good things. What are good things? Well, whatever the champions of social justice decide this week. But first, last, and always, it is the cause of economic redistribution. According to the doctrine of social justice, the haves always have too much, and the have-nots never have enough. You don't have to take my word for it. That is precisely how a UN report on social justice defines the term. Quote, "Social justice may be broadly understood as the fair and compassionate distribution of the fruits of economic growth. Social justice is not possible without strong and coherent redistributive policies conceived and implemented by public agencies." Let me repeat that.
So justice mean to you, really? That's the question I have. And what does it actually mean in terms of how you understand it and you allow it to sort of manifest in your space? For me, if an injustice moves me, just do something to acknowledge that feeling. That's all I'm saying. If something around your block, in your office, in your space, in your on your Instagram, on your Twitter, if it moves you badly, do something to acknowledge that feeling. Do something good. That concludes our show for today. If you have any queries, please send us an email at press.social-tv. But also, if you want to know a little bit more about what we do, go to www.social-tv.co.za. Happy Friday, everybody. Have a great one.